Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and we are back with episode XX of Reusable Space Program. XX, of course, being 20 in Roman numerals. Not that these Kerbals have much need for Roman numerals, they are just truck drivers on their way to the moon. Now, of course, the encounter we had them set up on would result in a collision with the moon, which would not do much for their no-claims bonus, so they decided to adjust the orbit just a little, bring themselves out into a grazing orbit where, of course, they can perform their insertion. Now, the reason for the truck being here is that when I upgraded, I managed to lose all my Kethane information from my Kethane plugin. I actually deleted it. So I'm going to have to rescan the entire moon for Kethane, and as it happens, the location of my current base does not have any Kethane. So I need to... In between all these transfers, I've been running scans with the space probe, and we're going to try and figure out where the hell we can actually find some sweet green gold, as they say. But this is going to take a long time. Back to business, we have a truck to get into orbit, and thankfully, the Kerbal alarm clock tells us that it's all set up. See, the beauty is that we set up the encounter, the maneuver node beforehand, set the alarm, and remind ourselves. Then we can go off and, watch the probe scan for Kethane and things like that. And when the time comes, it will tell us. It is a very useful plugin, I must say, if you're trying to manage something like big. If you're just doing a single mission, it's not necessarily that interesting. So yeah, you see we're coming in at quite an angle, so I leave it on a highly elliptical orbit. That'll be the plan. We'll go on a highly elliptical orbit, and then we will perform the plane correction maneuver out here. And you'll notice the maneuver node I'm adjusting using the improved maneuver node plugin, which is actually redundant now that Mechanical Jeb 2.0 is here. Now, the only problem I'm having with Mechanical Jeb at this time is that apparently to add it into existing save files, you have to go in and edit the save file and modify the existing Mechanical Jebs so that they get the relevant plugin data, the relevant part modules applied to them. And that's kind of hard because I've got like 30 odd ships. Not that all of them have mech jebs, but actually some of them have multiple ones because they're consisted of multiple spacecraft all docked together. So this will be a trial period while I'm still using the old one until I can be bothered fixing it. It's possible that some of the things you're going to see is because I went in and edited the save file to test this. But regardless, you'll see what's got what interesting things have afflicted my save in a while. Anyway, so we got ourselves. We're just doing the whole encounter thing. You see, correct the maneuver, and then we put ourselves in a circular orbit, and we try to get our. What we're trying to do is get the relative approach distance down as close as possible. Once again, set up an alarm clock, and of course, I can go away while the alarm clock is firing if I wanted. Otherwise, I can just set up the alarm clock, and it will automatically stop me when I'm close to it, which is nice because it basically adds a nice warp to functionality. Although, granted, again, MechJab 2.0 will do that for me as well. Warp to alarm clock, nice idea. But yeah, we're just going to fire along this. You see we're going. Full thrust there. You notice the thrust lever on the right hand next to the driver and his steering wheel, a device which is totally not set up for controlling a spacecraft. But nonetheless, he does seem to be able to fly this thing. I'm guessing the people actually flying the spacecraft are the ones in the capsule underneath, in the Moonerbus. There we go, and then just do a quick adjustment, and we get closest approach about 2.2 kilometers, and we are all set to... I'm just trying to get... No, wait a second. Closest approach in 200, sorry. Approach distance 24, 20. A lot of adjusting, a lot of tweaking here. This is how it works. We're going to set up... I guess we're going to do a partial maneuver round. Lower orbit, and then once we get there... Again, we can set up the Moonerbus to do this. And there's another object near to the space station at this time. I wonder what that is. It doesn't appear to be on same orbit. I should have probably figured out what that was. Now, yes. So now we can actually adjust our closest approach down. Look, 12, 11, just by increasing our orbital apoapsis, not our semi-major axis, so that we basically encounter the space station. Now, meanwhile, a great many things are happening at the space station. The Arachne, the spider, now it is going to need the winch system, the Kerbal attachment system, to pick up this truck and put it on the surface. That's the plan for getting it onto the surface. Now I know what some people are going to say. Isn't Kerbal attachment system not 100% functional at this time? And you would be correct. But I figured I needed to try it. So anyway, to get it actually on there, I have to carry it over with the little RCS tug and then dock onto it using the Arachne. It's a terribly inefficient system, but it's kind of cool because it means we have interchangeable tools attached to this sky crane thing. Yeah, docking port camera, Romfairer, really quite like it. Kind of useful. I do get a bunch of other things with it. We get it came along with the Buran shuttle space arm thing. It's all in the same DLL. There we go, coming in. Come in and give me your sweet, sweet winching capabilities, winch. Come here, winch. No, that doesn't work, does it? There we go. And for later, we can leave these guys around. Oh, that's kind of weird. I saw inside it. Yeah, just dock this back onto the station for now. While we're just waiting for this encounter to go through. And dock. Yeah, I wonder, most docking systems that we have these days, they don't get a huge amount of use. I wonder how, in the long term, these things will end up working. Also, the space train, it also returns. I translated, or I substituted Mechanical Jeb on this, but I found that it was having serious problems maneuvering it for docking, so I ended up manually docking the thing myself. Anyway, we have now maneuvered our spacecraft, we have got it nearby, so I move the robot arm out the way, and time to switch over to the space station, detach this, because we don't want the spacecraft that's coming in to pick us up to have that in its way. So there we go. And just trying to maneuver it in such a way that it will be just completely out of the way. It's not the most obvious set of controls here, but I guess you get used to them. It'd be nice to map those to keys. Maybe they are mapped to keys and I just don't know it. Maybe we could map it to a joystick. Maybe we could have a surgeon simulator type control system so we can control a robot arm with a robot arm, huh? Anyway, let's eject and switch character. What the hell? Yeah. Oh my god. Yes, switching around. Oh my bloody hell. Ah. That was great. So yeah, I was switching keys with the bracket keys to try to switch. Whoa, wow. Total like missile trail there. I was switching controls or switching spacecraft with the keys. And because I have the Romfairer plug-in, it had like a control range of 100 kilometers. So as I was flying over this base on the moon, one random click was all it took. And then I was in control of the moon, at which point things just broke. You saw that one of the spacecraft was underground. The rover was underground. This was underground. This one survived. But the inflatable habitat just... Yeah, it is... Oh, there it's falling in the background. Oh, it's gonna explode. Oh, no, I guess it has airbags, huh? Well, there, that survived, though. Nice, we can go and fly into this cloud of debris and look for survivors or something, I don't know. This is a big, big problem. I've discovered that switching around between spacecraft has a pretty high chance right now of making things explode. Now, with Romfairer's plugin enabled, that means that you can randomly switch to something within like 100 kilometers, which means that you can just be minding your own business, switching ships, and then you switch to something on the surface, and all hell breaks loose. That doesn't appear to be the entirety of the problem, because I go in and I cut down the range so that I'm not going to switch between objects in orbit unless I really need it. I can do that. Oh, there's a quantum strut object. That was one thing that did change. Maybe the collision mesh on that is causing trouble. I don't actually know. Oh, wow, what the hell? Wow, that light went a really long way. And yes, another mechanical jab dying. Very, very... Cannot switch vessels while about to crash. And indeed, we're trying to get out of this. I hit F3. There we go. Flight results. Look at this. Pages upon pages upon pages upon pages of data. Unfortunately, yeah, it says I was about to crash. I really was about to crash. I switched on this. Whole game crashed. Anyway, since switching between... apparently switching between vessels also damages my space station. Note the space train falling apart spontaneously as I switch. I literally destroyed like 24 ships trying to figure out what was going on here. This was the most frustrating episode. I don't know if it's because my save file is corrupted or because there's some plugin which is causing this to happen, but it is seriously causing a whole bunch of grief, which is painful. But look, I can admire the space station from this capsule as I float away into space. Well, at least the view on the inside is nice. So yeah, I decided to switch to this thing and start, what was the deal? Yeah, I switched to this from the tracking station, and it didn't seem to explode this time. So seizing upon the opportunity, I head out towards the Mooner bus with my magnet attached, intent on picking this thing up and depositing on the surface and perhaps getting somewhere after spending a good 2-3 hours messing around with spacecraft exploding spontaneously. This was a relief to get one moment where it did not. So I come in towards the Mooner bus. And now I need to pick this thing up. You notice I haven't adjusted the robot arm. For a while I thought that something to do with the location of the robot arm was causing the explosions. So I would make sure I didn't touch the robot arm before switching spacecraft. And indeed, everything's okay so far. So we back away and we start to adjust the robot arm out of the way. Notice that it's all turned on. Rotate the spacecraft and switch to the space station, and it explodes. What more evidence do you need than that, than a one-off occurrence, right? Obviously, we don't know. I personally think I'm going to blame Romfeder for my exploding stuff, mostly because he's the newest member of the team, and I always like to get at devs, even though they're doing amazing things. Just kidding, guys, I love what you're doing, seriously. Anyway, so yeah, despite the space station being destroyed, I figure I continue with the broken Kerbal attachment system to see if it will at least... Wow. Yeah, it just smashed that there. Well, so much for that idea. I figured that the winch might be broken. Also note, because there's no pilot here, I can't turn off the camera. Anyway, I decide to try another approach to see if I can hang from another spacecraft using the robot arm. So you see here, coming up, maneuvering the other spacecraft to try and attach it to the arm. And the arm is in the other spacecraft. We come in very close, waiting for a green light to say there is something in range. There we go! Oh, great, there goes my engine. Well, so much for that. Still, at least everyone's okay. The spacecraft didn't magically explode or anything. It's just floating. Whoa, my goodness! Oh my god, look at that robot arm go. It's like that Japanese Gedan song, right? Ah! Okay, well, so obviously the robot arm is out, the Kerbal attachment system is out. What do I have left? Well, I have a docking port on the back of the rover, on the back of the truck, but that would mean that these guys would be hanging face first towards the lunar surface, the Mooner surface. Well, anyway, another theory I had was that the random explosions when I switched spacecraft were due to changing between physics being enabled and disabled. So I figured that if I flew my rocket or flew my spacecraft within like 100 meters, then the physics would be turned on all the time and we wouldn't have this transitioning where it was turning on and off. So yeah, got to get within about 100 meters or thereabouts to be sure. And then we'll park it nearby and bring the other spacecraft around. So there we go. And adjusting it, we're going to point it in the normal position because that's the one that I traditionally like for docking. Even though I have much better tools now, I think I still prefer this location. So yeah, get this out of here, bring it comes off, and then we bring it around and dock onto the station. Why? I don't know. I could have probably just flown the other spaceship first. But yeah, we're just going to leave it there. Probably because it has less chance of exploding if I randomly switch to it, hey? I don't know. I decided to do this first. Besides, these guys have been floating around in space with the only company being a triplet of truck drivers. I mean, what fun is that, right? At least they'll get on and be able to talk to train drivers now, right? A train driver whose spacecraft spontaneously explodes. Also, note me ditching the winch for now. Frankly, I could come out with the little space tug and pick it up and everything, but I think I'll let that thing serve some time as space debris so that it learns to become a better winch. Get away from me, winch. Yes, okay. Anyway, nothing has exploded so far, and we're coming out to the space truck. Space truck. Now I'm gonna have to hook myself onto the back somehow. And of course that robot arm needs to get out of the way again. Note the spacecraft spinning in the background. Nice. Okay. So make sure I'm using the right control. We're going to hit the parallel -1. And we bring up the docking port camera. And because, it gets very confused here as I keep switching back and forth between the correct controls. Yeah. If you press C, then it switches you to the cockpit, which instantly instantly switches your orientation over, right? Which is why, well, I mean, it can be really dangerous if you're flying a maneuver and then you switch to the cockpit and suddenly the whole thing wants to flip around and your engine's pointing the wrong way, and suddenly instead of thrusting against the surface, you're nosediving into the surface. It's a bad thing to happen, which is why I can't unfortunately get some pretty pictures of these guys nosediving into the ground. You'll see that later. Never mind. Anyway, yes, more docking action. Ship-on-ship docking action. I wonder how many dockings have been performed in the history of the various space programs. I mean, it's been 50 years, I think, since Buzz Aldrin's he submitted his PhD thesis on orbital navigation for Rendezvous, and that was actually the thing that NASA initially had problem with. During their first attempts, they couldn't figure out, how to do the station keeping early on because it was kind of unnatural, all the different orbital operations. Anyway, look, we're going to get this thing and taking it down towards the surface. Yeah, Buzz Aldrin may have written his PhD thesis on the subject, but it was Neil Armstrong who actually performed the first docking with Gemini 8. Originally, Gemini 6 was supposed to do the first docking, but unfortunately the target vehicle that it was supposed to dock with was destroyed on takeoff. It was like a dumb target. So instead they launched Gemini 6 and 7 together, and Wally Schirra basically moved the two spacecraft together. And he had a lot to say. Apparently, there's some interesting quotes. He describes it. We have to think in a totally different way until you get right on top of them. He moved his Gemini spacecraft something like within 1 foot, 30 centimeters of the other one. And Gemini 4 was actually the first time that NASA really attempted rendezvous, where they basically asked the Gemini to rendezvous with the spent upper stage. Obviously, they were in a very similar orbit to start with, but they weren't able to maintain the positioning at that point because they didn't understand the maneuvering required for the orbital mechanics. And also the upper stage was venting, remaining fuel, and that was causing it to drift. And apparently the pilot had issues with depth perception in space, and he couldn't judge how far away he was. So, it's interesting to look through the history of Gemini to realize, what they learned during it. Gemini was basically developing all the skills he needed to make Apollo work. And actually, it's some of the more interesting missions. Mercury, of course, with the first missions, Gemini's kind of overlooked as being kind of halfway between Apollo and Mercury. But it's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Anyway, we are coming down and gonna try landing here. Now, unfortunately, I figured out that my translatron once again was on the blink. This time, it at least worked, but it would only let me hover. It wouldn't let me descend. So you see this puttering here. I don't know what's going on, but I wanted it to bring me down slowly. And you can see it just pulsing those thrusters there, which surely cannot be good for nuclear thrusters. Surely, I think nuclear thrusters are much better for sustained operation. Anyway, yeah, we've got to bring it down. Now, the idea is we want to put this down going backwards so it kind of falls onto its wheels. I put the robot arm vertically so that if it falls, it'll tend to fall towards the direction of its wheels. And maybe the robot arm's strong enough to push it back onto its wheels, but I'm taking no chances. So we're going to come down. I'm now basically flying this mostly manually. I'm using the smart ASS to hold my position vertical, but I'm basically just turning it myself. So I'm look, it's really cool. Look at the front wheels on the truck as it's turning. It'd be really neat to switch it to their viewpoint. Unfortunately, if I did that, it would switch around my control axes and I'd crash into the surface. So look, I see the way that I'm moving. So now I turn the whole spacecraft using the shadow as a reference frame. See that? So now what'll happen is if I land it like that, it'll tend to roll onto its wheels. So I just need to bring myself down as close as possible to the surface, as gentle as possible, and I want to undock this thing when it happens. There we go. Almost. There we go. And oh. Yes, getting away there, getting away. And I am home free. It looks like it landed on its wheels and we are ready to get to work as space truckers, or moon truckers. But that will be in a future episode. Until then, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.